Chapter 34:21. The majestic and thick flame enveloped the battlefield. The surrounding air stirred up huge waves. Over at Nether Palace's side, tens of thousands of corpse puppets, under this wave, vanished into thin air. And those Nether Palace disciples were also suppressed by this wave of profound chi, as they fled in all directions. Diamo Xian was enraged. His aura continued to rise. The entire East Continent's air seemed to be distorted together. The entire space was shaking, squeezing. That palm which God Thief had just suffered, although at the crucial moment, Diamo Xian had retracted the power of his palm. But the remnant power still shook his internal organs. The pressure of this majestic aura. God Thief's body immediately swayed as he fell backwards. Ghost, Ghost Thief. Ghost King shouted this word in panic. His eyes kept staring at God Thief, whose mouth was overflowing with blood, but his face was deathly pale. His throat felt like it was being choked by an icy cold hand, making it extremely difficult for him to even breathe. Overlord. Gui Wu looked at the man who was shrouded in a gloomy aura as he spoke indifferently. The 3000 Peach Blossom side has already found out the real location of Nether Palace. If you rush over now, you should still be able to make it. Saying that, Gui Wu's palm moved. A piece of leather floated in midair. Diamo Xian's deep eyes were suffused with a biting cold glint. He stretched out his hand. The leather followed the profound wave as it fell into his palm. He swept a glance at the map as his deep and cold Peach Blossom eyes looked at Gui Wu coldly. Is this true? Peach's ability, you are very clear. Facing Diamo Xian's penetrating aura, Gui Wu's expression was still calm and indifferent. Diamo Xian's 5 fingers which were holding the map tightened. Leave this place to us, this calamity of Nirvana realm. We are already involved in it, we will not sit back and do nothing. Gui Wu said indifferently. The purple light in Diamo Xian's eyes was like the turbulent waves of the undercurrent, surging wave after wave. A few breaths. Without any hesitation, his figure stretched out, and turned into a remnant shadow, disappearing. Where did Overlord go? Overlord and Madam Emperor have left. Then what should we do? The various powerhouses watched as the two saviors disappeared from the battlefield. He could not help but feel a sense of fear. There were also many conspiracy theorists who spoke in fear. Did His Majesty and Madame D run away? They couldn't defeat the army of the land, so they abandoned us and fled. As soon as these words left his mouth, regardless of whether it was true or not, everyone's hearts were shaken. For a time, everyone in the Nirvana realm was in a state of panic. Earlier, because of Diamo Xian's rage, the joy of dispersing those 10,000 corpses had suddenly vanished. What nonsense are you spouting? When Yan Xiaoyi heard this, she immediately raised the black sickle blade in exasperation and slashed in the direction of the conspiracy theorist. Are you all blind? Qing Luo was brought away by the Earth Emperor's scheme. What escape? Can't you see that our world mercenary group's people are still here? Can't you see that Qing Luo's war pets are still here? The representatives of the conspiracy theorists were so shocked that they took a few steps back. He wanted to argue. But looking at the aggressive Yan Xiaoyi, and behind Yan Xiaoyi, the unfriendly faces of the young men and women, he was stunned, not daring to say a single word. Even if Qing Luo and Overlord are not on the battlefield, but similarly the Earth Emperor is not on the battlefield, so the collaborators of the secluded palace will not continue to fight. Long Yunzhan's icy cold voice rang. Chapter 34:22. This battle, no matter if Qing Luo is here or not, no matter if the Overlord is here or not, we must carry on with the battle. Even if we have to drag it out, we have to drag it out till Overlord and Qing Luo join hands to destroy the Palace of Abyss Base. Long Yunzhan was the leader of the World Mercenary Group. His words were naturally more convincing than Yan Xiaoyi's or anyone else's. In addition, Long Yunzhan was as cold as ice. This chill was able to dispel the fear in everyone's hearts. Especially after hearing the words destroy the base of the Palace of Darkness. They were even more convinced. Just now, the conversation between the Overlord and Master Gui Wu had been heard clearly by those who were standing nearby. The Overlord took the map of the Palace of Darkness and went to the Palace of Darkness. If the base of the gloomy palace was destroyed, then the Nirvana realm could be saved. That's right. Even if they had to stall until the Overlord destroyed the base of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. The other side. Qing Luo felt a splitting headache. Because of this sharp pain, her consciousness became much clearer. She slowly opened her eyes. What entered his eyes was a dark hall. The hall was empty. There was nothing on display. A cool breeze caressed their faces, and the entire palace gave off an eerie feeling of emptiness. Luo rubbed her head as she surveyed her surroundings. He was a little confused. Where was he? She slowly sat up straight, her head still throbbing with pain. She frowned as she recalled what had happened before she fainted. That's right. She had almost been enveloped by the sword wave released by the earthly sovereign and was in a dilemma. Fortunately, Xianxia was there to protect them. Xianxia's hard turtle shell could resist the sword waves of the earthly sovereign perfectly. Because of this, she wasn't affected by the sword wave. However, the profound light released by the sword wave was indeed a little too dazzling. She could only listen to the sound to determine what was happening outside of the sword wave. Xian, she heard Xian's voice. She heard the sound of Xian being stopped. He also sensed Xian's anger. She was worried that Xian would be too worried, so she tried to calm him down. However, just as she finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly he felt a strong suction force coming at him. Then a white light flashed before his eyes. Boundless sword waves engulfed her. Then, she lost consciousness. Then, when she opened her eyes, she found herself in an unfamiliar and empty hall. Master. Suddenly, he heard an extremely soft sound beside his ear. Luo felt that her ears were starting to itch. She raised her hand and touched it. Then he felt something hard. He held it in front of his eyes. It was actually a miniature version of Xianxia. The size was about the same as Luo's palm. It was a green tortoise. However, there were two snake-like and dragon-like creatures coiled around the tortoise shell. The style, he looks familiar. Where have I seen him before? Master, this place is shrouded in a very gloomy yin qi. Staying here for a long time will pollute your heart. Xianxia's voice interrupted Luo's contemplation. Indeed, the atmosphere here was very stifling. After breathing for a long time, he could feel a slight chill in his body. She put Xianxia on her shoulder and propped herself up. His body was still a little weak. The stinging pain in her head became more obvious because of her movements. Chapter 34-23. But, after a round of searching, Luo discovered that there was no exit in this palace. The entire palace was like a cage. Other than the two large skylights on the roof, Luo didn't find any place that could connect to the outside world. She tried to slip out from the skylight. But the moment she got close to the edge of the skylight, Old Man Tsang reminded her nervously, "Backlash barrier. Last, the person who set up this barrier is much stronger than you. You can't get close to this barrier." Backlash barrier? Luo had heard of this kind of barrier. It could be said that it was an extremely insidious barrier. If it wasn't someone with stronger ability who could forcefully break the barrier, if the trapped person wanted to escape from the spirit formation, he would be able to escape. The moment she touched the barrier, there was an 80% possibility of being swallowed by the backlash barrier. In other words, Luo was completely trapped in this palace to death. Who was it that trapped her in here? What was the purpose of trapping her in here? Could it be Earth Sovereign? Or this was another conspiracy of the secluded palace? Luo, who was deep in thought, suddenly felt a dull pain in her brain. Her petite body swayed and immediately knelt on the ground. She held her forehead with one hand and pressed it hard. "Master," Xianxia said worriedly, "the atmosphere here is getting gloomier and gloomier. After a long period of breathing, no matter how strong Master's willpower is, I'm afraid you can't resist the pollution of this atmosphere." Xianxia's voice lowered, revealing some guilt. If the one beside Master is Vermilion Bird, it must have a way to wash away the gloomy atmosphere here. Luo's breathing paused slightly when mentioning Vermilion Bird. Indeed, if Qian was here, its blazing flame could purify the dirty atmosphere here. But unfortunately, before she fell into a coma, she only remembered that Xianxia, who was standing in front of her, suddenly bit her sleeve. And then, when she woke up, there was only Xianxia beside her, and the other battle pets. They didn't follow her back to the pet space. But it was good that Shiju, Chi-Chi, Chi-Yen and Azure Dragon didn't return to the pet space. This also meant that they stayed on the battlefield in the East Continent. There were 3 sacred beasts and an evolving panther dragon on the battlefield. The Nirvana realm would have a higher chance of winning. Don't blame yourself. Luo gasped lightly. "With you around, I have another layer of protection." Xianxia's turtle shell was extremely hard. Compared to the barrier that could withstand attacks, it was much sturdier. In this strange place there was such a safeguard. That way she would be able to block the fatal damage and have more opportunities to counterattack. Yiqing Luo adjusted her sitting posture and slowly sat on the ground to rest. She shook her head vigorously. He wanted to shake the dull pain in his head to the back of his mind. Little girl, it seems like someone intentionally wants to trap you here and use this filthy baleful aura to pollute your heart and control you. Old man Song's voice rang out. His voice was like a source of warmth, soothing the dull pain in her head bit by bit. Yiqing Luo held her head and didn't reply. The atmosphere in the palace was getting gloomier and gloomier. It was full of baleful aura. He just walked around the palace a little. She didn't just have a dull headache. Even her heart was somewhat chaotic and impetuous. This was the purpose of the other party to trap her here. Chapter 34-24. Could it be? Was it the Palace of Darkness? A long time ago, the dark forces wanted to make use of the profound yin qi to control her consciousness. The dark forces joined the Palace of Darkness. Because both parties had the same goal. Then, there was a possibility that the Palace of Darkness wanted to control her consciousness to achieve some kind of goal. Recalling the conversation between Ghost King and the Palace Lord of the Palace of Darkness. They had mentioned it before. What the Palace of Darkness wanted was this body of hers. No matter what method they used, as long as she was still breathing, it would be enough to bring her back to the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. That's right. The Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. The Palace of Darkness wanted to control her consciousness so that she would willingly become the vessel of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. And the Palace of Darkness wanted to use her to find the Divine Emperor's tomb. The Palace of Darkness's motive right from the start was these 2 points. Yiqing Luo, who understood the Palace of Darkness's motive, clenched her slender fingers tightly. If that was the case, all the more she could not be influenced by the surrounding yin qi. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes forcefully, to make her consciousness clearer. Because in the past 10 over years, as the young matriarch of a hidden family in the 21st century, the training she had undergone was unimaginable. Her willpower was much higher than ordinary people by several times. But even for her, sitting in this hall, not only did Xiao Chen have a splitting headache, even his heart felt vaguely irritated, an indescribable feeling of irritation surging into his heart. She used all her strength to control the evil fire in her heart. Her slender fingers clenched tightly into her palm. Her round nails were embedded into her flesh, imprinting a crescent arc shape. Using the prickling sensation to stimulate her consciousness. Master, I seem to see a ray of light. Xiangue, who was on her shoulder, leaped up and speedily dashed towards the center of the palace. Xiangue. Yiqing Luo called out but didn't get any response from Xiangue. She could only prop herself up and walk towards the direction where Xiangue was dashing towards. Perhaps the yin qi in the palace was getting thicker and thicker. Or perhaps she had breathed for too long in this palace, causing the yin qi to enter her body. Even a simple walk was extremely strenuous for her. Master, look here. Xiangui's voice was filled with excitement. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and quickened her pace. She followed Xiangui's voice and found his position in the dim hall. The small one was squatting in the corner of the hall. A thin beam of light shone on the 2 snakes and dragons on Xiangui's back. It flickered between light and dark, making the 2 small things look even more treacherous and eerie. What? There was actually a ray of light in this corner? If it wasn't for the fact that Xiangue was so small and happened to see it. Even if she was locked up for decades, she might not be able to discover the problem with this corner of the wall. She stooped down and used the glowing flame fan to create a wind blade that swept towards the corner of the wall. Then he cautiously picked up Xiangue and took a few steps back. The wind blade hit the corner of the wall. Boom! A loud noise was heard. The wall suddenly broke into pieces and collapsed. Yiqing Luo was stunned. What was going on? Wasn't this a cage specially made to trap her? And even specially set up a backlash enchantment. This wall. How could it collapse so easily? Yiqing Luo expressed a dumbfounded look. Boom, 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 the rubble on the wall fell to the ground. The dust rolled and gradually dispersed. There was not an exit behind the collapsed wall. Chapter 34-25. It was unknown what kind of brick the wall was made of, but the engraved murals were extremely clear. Yiqing Luo sensed for a moment. After confirming that there was no danger, he took a few steps forward and examined the murals on the wall. The light here was too dim. In addition, the carvings on the wall were very messy. Yiqing Luo looked at it for some time before she could vaguely see. It looked like a human-shaped mural. On the mural, there were 5 small objects that looked like jewelry floating around the human figure. On the other side of the mural was a complex totem. The lines were messy and complicated. No matter how she looked at it, Yiqing Luo couldn't understand what that totem was. "These murals?" he heard Old Man Song's surprised voice. Following that, Yiqing Luo's wrist felt hot. Old Song floated out from the azure dew bracelet. He was now in his corporeal form. He was dressed in a white robe, and he was extremely eye-catching in the dark palace. He rushed to the front of the mural and raised his trembling hand, wanting to touch the human-shaped totem carved on it. But the finger is about to touch the mural. Then he retracted his arm stiffly. However, his eyes were still fixed on the mural. It was as if he was reminiscing about something through the murals. Old Man Song. Yiqing Luo walked to the back of Old Man Song and looked at his expression. "You know what's carved on this mural?" Old Man Song's hand slowly hung at his side. He stared intently at the mural, and the expression on his face was somewhat moved. "The figure on the mural is the Emperor of the Divine Emperors." Old Man Song's voice was somewhat trembling. "If one looked closely, I can see that." As he spoke, even his body was trembling slightly. This was excitement and nostalgia. The Emperor of the God Emperor, these 4 words had completely shocked Yiqing Luo. Isn't that the legendary monarch of the divine monarchs? How could the Emperor of a divine emperor be carved on a wall in the form of a mural? I can't be wrong. This is the Emperor of the divine emperor, and these. Old Man Song raised his hand and gently stroked the 5 small things floating beside the human-shaped totem. Do they look familiar? Familiar? This kind of abstract carving. Yiqing Luo could only vaguely see the outlines and shapes of these carvings. She stared at it for a while. Suddenly, his eyelashes trembled. His finger pressed on one of the small things. Unlike Old Man Song, she was still separated by air and did not dare to touch him. Instead, he placed his hand completely on top of it. This is the azure water ring? Yiqing Luo's hand pressed on the totem suspended above the head of the human totem. That carved little thing in her azure water ring, whether it was the shape, the outline, or the size, all perfectly matched. Then she brought her wrist down. That totem that was like a thin line as expected, also overlapped with the azure water silk chain. Vast water artifact. This mural depicted the Emperor of Divine Emperors and the blue water divine artifact. That's right. Old Man Song looked at Yiqing Luo's hand and the mural with a burning gaze. After a long time he furrowed his white eyebrows. But why would there be a portrait of the Divine Emperor and a portrait of the azure water divine artifact here? I'm afraid this place is no longer the Nirvana realm. It was impossible for such a mural to appear in the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand. Her fingertips swept over the profound phoenix ring. From the beginning, she realized that this place might not be within the boundaries of the Nirvana realm. Chapter 34:26. The connection between the profound phoenix ring and profound dragon ring, unless they were separated by a plane or a space. Otherwise, it was impossible to lose its reaction. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she looked up and down at the mural. Why is the totem of the Emperor of God carved in this palace? Then, the totem opposite the Emperor of God, what is it carved on? Old Man Song slowly shifted his gaze onto her. His gaze was deep and gloomy. That is, the Emperor of God's tomb. The Emperor of God's tomb? Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. She frowned slightly as her eyes were filled with astonishment. The portrait of the Emperor of God, the portrait of the vast water divine weapon and the Emperor of God's tomb. Old Man Song's expression turned solemn. Looks like the other party's motive of trapping you in this palace is because of the Emperor of God's tomb. Listening to Old Man Song's words, Yiqing Luo linked it back to those guesses which she had told the mistress of the Palace of Seclusion. Yiqing Luo's expression sunk. This is the Palace of Seclusion's turf. You're indeed the lady who made the Overlord and my disciple head over heels for you. You're indeed intelligent. Suddenly, a cold voice was heard from all directions in the palace. That voice was so cold that it made one shudder. Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings alertly as she extended her senses to the maximum. But she still couldn't sense any other aura. She couldn't even tell which direction the voice came from. That voice seemed to be very close, yet it seemed to be extremely far away. More accurately, that voice was illusory, as though it had enveloped the entire palace. You are. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly as her eyes were vigilant and icy cold. Her vision swept through the surroundings once again. She then slowly spat out a sentence, word by word, Palace of Seclusion. The real mastermind behind the scenes. That cold and gloomy voice laughed sinisterly. That cold and treacherous laughter made Yiqing Luo's scalp go numb. Controlling the palace of dark seclusion behind the scenes, finding countless people with high status in the upper realm to help the palace of dark seclusion. He even stopped the people from the upper realm from intervening when they invaded the nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave a faint smile. Since your status is noble and your ability is powerful, why must you persist on scheming against a lower realm young lady like me? The smile on her lips was full of disdain. Don't you think it's degrading? Missy, I really appreciate your praise. The laughter of the person behind the scenes of the palace of gloomy darkness became even more ethereal and eerie. You're right. I do have a noble status and powerful strength, but what I want is not just this little bit of status. Perhaps he was too confident in himself. Perhaps it was because he was certain that Yiqing Luo would lose her sense of self in this hall. The person behind the scenes of Gloomy Palace was very honest. He patiently answered Yiqing Luo's question. Hearing the other party's reply, Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed a glint of darkness. There seemed to be waves surging in the depths of his eyes. You want to become the Emperor of the Divine Emperors? She asked. The Emperor of the Divine Emperors? The person behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness gave a disdainful smile. If I am able to obtain the inheritance of the Emperor of the Divine Emperors, I will be the Emperor of the Divine Emperors. Adding on to my ability. What does the Emperor of the Divine Emperors count for? The minute these words were spoken, Yiqing Luo was completely shocked. Chapter 34:27. Wasn't the ambition of the person behind the scenes of the Nether Palace a little too big? The other party was actually thinking of. To dominate the upper realm? Was this the rhythm of wanting to be the master of the world? Even if the person behind the scenes of the Nether Palace wanted to be the master of the world, and had the ability to become the master of the world, the law of Heavenly Way would not allow one person to control all the planes, the entire world, or even the universe. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the so-called upper realm, nirvana realm, and other levels of distribution of the various planes. All the planes were mutually restricting and mutually balancing each other's existence. As though he could read Yiqing Luo's thoughts. That person laughed sinisterly again. As long as I have absolute ability. Even if Heavenly Way does not allow it, I will go against the heavens, why can't I? That arrogant tone was filled with self-confidence. As though everything was in the palm of his hand. Yiqing Luo frowned. Since your target is me, the vessel that I, the Divine Phoenix Profound Jade Heart, why? Still want to destroy Nirvana Realm? It's just a waste plane, a bunch of waste existing in this world, it's just a waste of resources. That person's tone was filled with disdain. I want to rebuild this world. From that person's words, Yiqing Luo could roughly guess the other party's character. That person was not only confident but also extremely arrogant. To put it bluntly, that person wanted to be the creator god of the world. He wanted to control the entire world in his own hands. Yiqing Luo. Suddenly that person laughed arrogantly, calling out Yiqing Luo's name. That sinister and treacherous tone. It made Yiqing Luo's scalp go numb. She congealed her senses, scanning the surroundings alertly but didn't reply. Immediately following that, she heard that illusory voice sounding sinisterly, "You make me very surprised." Yiqing Luo's heart trembled. This sentence was absolutely not considered as a compliment. But even if it was a compliment, being complimented by this kind of person was even more disgusting than seeing that person eating sh*t. A low-grade waste plane. I thought it should be easy to rebuild. But, because of you, it caused my plan time and time again to be destroyed. That person's tone rose slightly. There was even a hint of deeper meaning in his tone. A low-grade trash plane caused me to suffer such heavy losses. Tell me, how should I punish you? Yiqing Luo's curly long eyelashes trembled slightly. She tried her best to restrain the turbulence in her heart. He had to maintain a calm and indifferent expression on his face. Especially at this time. She couldn't afford to panic. Once she panicked, his aura would weaken. This would definitely give the other party a chance to take advantage of it. The other party was the mastermind behind the Dark Palace. It was also rumored that he had a very high status in the upper realm. His strength was so strong that it made people tremble in fear. If the other party wanted to take her life, he could do so with a flick of his finger. She could not panic. He had to remain calm. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath as her pink lips curled upwards, curling into a cold arc of ridicule. A thin layer of frost covered her long and narrow eyes. Before we find the Divine Emperor's tomb, you won't punish me. Her voice was flat and emotionless. It was as if she was certain that the other party wouldn't do anything to her. The indistinguishable voice paused for a moment, as though he had not expected Yi Qing Luo to reply in this way. Several breaths later, that person started laughing. The sinister laughter was like circle after circle of ripples, rippling out in the hall layer by layer. Chapter 34:28. Yi Qing Luo, what makes you think that this seat will not punish you? That man laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with ridicule. You've made this seat see you in a different light. There aren't many people who can remain so calm in front of this seat. That man's laughter stopped abruptly. The next moment, that man's voice turned gloomy and cold for no reason. Too bad your self-righteous reliance is useless. In the palace, the gloomy aura started to surge. Every time Yi Qing Luo took a breath, she could feel a gush of coldness seeping into her body along with her breath. What this seat wants is your body and that divine phoenix profound heart jade of yours. As long as you're still breathing, that's enough. That man laughed lightly. This seat has 100 ways to let you be tortured and still keep your last breath. Yi Qing Luo. It seemed that all arrogant people had the heart of Yap Liangqin. Yi Qing Luo wasn't frightened by that man's words. She didn't feel any discomfort from the dense yin qi in the surroundings. Her expression was still that calm and composed. Back then the King of Darkness also wanted this divine phoenix profound heart jade of mine as a vessel. That man didn't reply, as though he was curious. Why did Yi Qing Luo mention the King of Darkness at this moment? Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled. The real palace lord of the secluded palace, what you want, is also this vessel of mine. So, that man was curious. Yi Qing Luo raised her fair hand and pressed on her heart as she gave a low laugh. You. A person with such great ambitions, you shouldn't waste your time on me? A young lady from the lower realm. But you trapped me in this palace and used evil methods to pollute my heart, and even specially appeared. It seemed that you appeared because I sensed the totem on the murals in this palace. But in actual fact, you're merely using your words to bewitch me, messing up my inner heart. You're also delaying time so that the evil qi here can control my consciousness and soul. Speaking of this, Yi Qing's smile revealed some confidence and trust. If I'm not wrong, you should know that Xian is on his way to save me. You're worried that Xian's appearance will ruin your plan today. Yi Qing Luo's analysis was logical. From start to finish, that person did not make a single sound. There was no rebuttal, no acknowledgement. It was as if he had disappeared. But Yi Qing Luo knew. The man was still there. He did not refute or admit it. It was only because she had guessed correctly. A truly powerful and arrogant person. It was disdain to lie to a little girl from the lower realm like her. So she guessed right. That person would not retort. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother whether that person would reply or not. Immediately after, he continued, both of you want the divine phoenix profound heart jade and also want this vessel of mine. This also proves that this divine phoenix profound heart jade is something that neither the King of Darkness nor you can control or use as you wish. In other words, apart from me, no one else can unleash the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade. This is also the reason why one of you wants to use the profound yin qi to control me, while the other wants to use the evil qi to control me. She raised her head as a calm glint circulated in her long and narrow eyes. Chapter 34:29. Yi Qing Luo's last word fell. The entire hall was silent. So quiet that the sound of the wind blowing the dust on the ground could be heard. Yi Qing Luo maintained her smile and did not continue to speak, quietly waiting for the other party's reaction. The quieter the other party was, this meant that what she had analyzed was correct. This also meant that she was in control of the sovereignty. Just like this, the silence lasted for about half an incense stick of time. In the air, an extremely soft, almost inaudible laughter was heard. Yi Qing Luo is indeed the chosen master of the divine phoenix profound jade heart, really smart, makes one want to destroy you. Accompanied by the laughter was that person's sinister voice. Are you sure you want to destroy me? Yi Qing Luo smiled. That person laughed even louder. Good. Very good. Yi Qing Luo, you can indeed be arrogant now. Wait till I dig out the divine phoenix profound jade heart along with your heart. I will make you wish you were dead. This sentence was also an indirect acknowledgement. The other party could not touch her now. What she was sure of, speculated, analyzed, all of it. Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly. I will wait and see. This word floated in the air. Immediately after, there was silence again. The quieter it was, the more strange the atmosphere. A trace of danger filled the entire space. Old Man Tsang and Shen Gui moved and quickly blocked in front of Yiqing Luo, full of vigilance. It's alright, that person has left. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief and slowly sat cross-legged on the ground. Left? Old Man Tsang turned around and looked at Yiqing Luo. The girl's face was full of exhaustion. Where was the confidence from earlier? Lass, if that person is really the mastermind behind the secluded palace, that means that person is from the upper realm. Most likely someone from the heaven realm and above. If you provoke that person like this and really angers him, even Old Man Tsang and Shen Gui can't save you. Old Man Tsang thought of the scene where Yiqing Luo angered that person and his heart jumped. That person is from the god realm. Yiqing Luo leaned against the wall and rubbed her brows hard. That person's ambition was to become the creator of all things in the world. He wanted to become the ruler of the world. Such an ambitious person. It was definitely impossible for him to be someone from the heaven realm. The god realm? Old Man Tsang's complexion suddenly darkened. Yiqing Luo raised her head and heavily exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. If we don't infuriate him, it's impossible for him to leave this place and we'll be in even more danger. She could feel it. While talking to that person, the stabbing pain in her head became more and more obvious. Just like what she had just analyzed. The man was talking to her. He was simply bewitching her heart. Her willpower was gradually diminishing. If she hadn't figured out that person's motive, she would have died. I'm afraid, there's a high possibility that that person's plan will succeed. The Palace of Tenebrous Darkness wants Master's profound heart jade in Master's body. At least, before they need Master's profound phoenix heart jade as a vessel, Master will be safe. Shen Gui moved closer to Yiqing Luo and comforted her. Yiqing Luo touched its tortoise shell, but if I continue to stay here, no matter how strong my willpower is, I might still be contaminated. She shook her aching head and caressed the profound phoenix ring with her fingertips. Chapter 34:30. But, as time went by, Yiqing Luo breathed more and more in qi. Her whole body was not only cold to the point of almost oozing a thin layer of frost. Her head also seemed to be pierced by a thin needle. She was trembling from head to toe. Old Man Tsang and Shen Gui kept talking to her. This was not the worst. As time went by, Yiqing Luo could even feel that the power in her body was gradually fading. The azure dew chain on her wrist and the azure dew ring on her fingertips were emitting scorching heat. It should be that her body was getting weaker, causing her body to be unable to withstand the power of the two divine weapons. After the power of the divine weapons gradually faded, it was even more strenuous for her to resist the evil yin qi around her. She couldn't sit still and wait for death. But now, even moving was extremely strenuous for her. Just at this moment, Yiqing Luo's sharp ears moved. Shen Gui's small body suddenly became big and blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. What's that sound? Old Man Tsang stood up and looked ahead vigilantly. Vaguely, he seemed to hear a slight sound coming from the hall. Then the sound was getting closer and closer. A ray of black light suddenly flashed. In front of her, two figures appeared out of thin air. Those two people were shrouded in a cloud of dense black qi. Their eyes shrouded in black qi were flashing a cold light. You? Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly when she saw the two people clearly. One of them, a thin but tall man, slowly walked forward. The cold and gloomy voice carried a chill that made people shudder. Yiqing Luo, long time no see. Yiqing Luo's pupils were fixed on that person. The man's age was about 40 or so. That face was so thin that there was only skin and bones left, looking extremely mean and penetrating. Especially the black qi emitting from his body. It made him look more and more gloomy and horrified. He licked his dry lips, his eyes filled with a crazy smile. Yiqing Luo, I always want to peel off your tendons, peel off your skin and drink your blood. He walked forward slowly. As her words left her mouth, the black qi on his body became even more intense. That was all hatred and malicious intent towards Yiqing Luo. Pharaoh, you actually degenerated yourself too. Become a corpse puppet. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as her penetrating gaze sized up the middle-aged man in front of her. Ever since the battle on the West Continent, she had never seen Pharaoh Crane before. To be more precise, she had never seen the three pharaohs who had escaped from the dark forces. Only a few Saint techniques worked for the Dark Nether Palace and were rather active. Unexpectedly, he would meet Pharaoh He again here. Yiqing Luo could sense that Pharaoh He's aura had changed. It was not just the aura. His movements were thick, sinister, and cold to the extreme. I just want you to die. Pharaoh Crane's mouth twitched maliciously. As long as I can avenge Dai, I don't care what I do. Clearly Pharaoh he had fallen into madness. His sinister eyes suddenly turned to look at the man beside him, who was also overflowing with evil aura. Xianmu, this is your enemy, do you see it? Pharaoh he's voice was cold and filled with bewitchment. Your Xiang died in her hands. If you want to avenge your Xiang, this is the only chance. Beside Pharaoh he, that man who was also overflowing with sinister aura. Chapter 34-31. The former president of the Heavenly Academy Faculty Council. Later, in order to follow xianxia, he joined Xianmu of the Netherworld Palace. Last time, in the secret base of secluded Abyss Palace in the South Waves continent, Xianmu took advantage of the chaos to escape. She thought that it was because Xianmu had brought them to the secret chamber to refine the dead corpse puppets. He had caused such a huge disaster. The Netherworld Palace would definitely not let Xianmu off. Unexpectedly, Xianmu was still alive. No, to be more precise, he couldn't be considered alive. Because now, Xianmu had also become a corpse puppet. But what surprised Yiqing Luo was that Xianmu's aura was much weaker than Pharaoh he. It felt like Xianmu was not a successful new type of corpse puppet. However, Xianmu seemed to have his own consciousness and was not considered a semi-finished product. I want to avenge Xiang. Xianmu also took a step forward and walked side by side with Pharaoh he towards Yiqing Luo. How did you two get in here? What are you trying to do? Old Man Tsang and Shen Guiyi saw the both of them taking action and immediately blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. Based on Yiqing Luo's current physical condition, she was unable to engage in battle. Pharaoh he raised his hand and pointed directly at Yiqing Luo. I said, I want her life. Xianmu was also filled with hatred as he stared at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly. He did not intend to explain to Xianmu. Back on the battlefield, the one who killed Sacred Art Elephant was Butterfly Sacred Art. Xianmu would not believe it even if she told him. Yiqing Luo was too lazy to explain to Xianmu. She half-crossed her legs and rested her arms on her knees. She narrowed her eyes and looked at the two of them quietly. That posture, that appearance. She was so lazy that it didn't seem like she was facing an enemy who wanted her life. She curled her pink lips and smiled calmly. You are the people behind the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. They let you in, right? So what if I am? So what if I'm not? Pharaoh he was smiling, but his eyes were filled with malice. If that's the case, then I can be at ease. After all, none of you would dare to kill me. Yiqing Luo smiled confidently as the corners of her lips curled into a faint cold arc. If not, I'm also very assured because you can't kill me. Pharaoh he's face darkened and killing intent flashed in his eyes. Are you so sure that you won't die? Your boss can't bear for me to die. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly as she raised her other hand and gently caressed her own face. No matter what, I'm still as beautiful as a flower, devastatingly beautiful. If I die, the world will lose a beautiful lady like me. Isn't that such a pity? Pharaoh he was infuriated by Yiqing Luo's shamelessness. He clenched his fists tightly. His entire body was shrouded in a sinister aura, like a flame constantly burning. Even that pair of sinister eyes was filled with a terrifying black light. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards. Facing the infuriated Pharaoh she was still that calm and indifferent. Actually, he could guess it. The hall was surrounded by a backlash barrier. These two people must have been sent in by the people behind the Palace of Darkness. His goal, of course, it wasn't to take her life. But it was much crueler than taking her life. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she leaned against the wall, trying to clear her mind. After that, she maintained her composure as she continued with a smile. Looks like Xian will be here very soon. Your boss is so anxious that he threw any Tom, Dick or Harry here. Chapter 34-32. I'm talking about whoever replied. Yiqing Luo raised her brows and glanced at him with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Xianmu's face was filled with anger as his eyes shot out a chilly evil chi. Just as he was about to open his mouth to scold Yiqing Luo. But Pharaoh he raised his hand and stopped his words. Xianmu's insulting words were stuck in his throat. His handsome face was flushed red. Pharaoh he looked coldly at the calm Yiqing Luo and said indifferently, Yiqing Luo, has anyone told you that this mouth of yours and your character makes it easy to be taken advantage of? He carried a high and mighty attitude as he looked down at Yiqing Luo who was leaning against the wall. The disdain in his eyes and the hatred that he was determined to get what he wanted were constantly burning. Yiqing Luo tilted her head and glanced at him with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Seems? No. then I shall be the first to tell you, and I shall use my actions to tell you. Pharaoh's gaze was sinister as he took a step forward. His thick, profound energy and the evil energy surrounding his body suddenly rose sharply. Tom, Dick, and Harry? He laughed sinisterly. How does it feel to die in the hands of the Tom, Dick, and Harry? Yiqing Luo, you're just an immobile waste now. Do you need me to teach you how to live longer? Look at that pretty face of yours. If you give in and say a few good words, I might have tender feelings for you and let you die more comfortably. Ah. After he finished this sentence, he laughed extremely wretchedly. Towards Pharaoh's words, Yiqing Luo didn't notice. Because when he released his profound energy, the evil qi enveloping him started to disperse. Her head started to hurt even more. Originally it was like a thin needle piercing into her head. Now they had turned into thick needles, stabbing her head with all their might. Her consciousness started to drift. Yiqing Luo more or less understood the reason why the mastermind of the secluded palace sent Pharaoh He and Xianmu into the hall. Perhaps Xian had really rushed over to save her. So the mastermind of the secluded palace could no longer wait patiently to let her lose her consciousness and accept their control. Therefore, he sent Pharaoh He and Xianmu into the hall. They wanted to use this to force Yiqing Luo to take action against the both of them. Once they took action, Yiqing Luo was about to release her profound energy. Once the dark force was released, the evil qi would be able to follow Yiqing Luo's limbs and bones even faster, seeping into her bone marrow and even her profound jade heart. In particular, the bodies of Pharaoh He and Xianmu were emitting a strong evil qi. Even if Yiqing Luo didn't make a move, Pharaoh He and Xianmu made their move. The evil qi on his body would also follow the attacks of Pharaoh He and Xianmu and rush into Yiqing Luo's body. This plan was indeed well thought out. As expected of a rat that was good at playing despicable tricks in dark corners, Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, trying her best to maintain her consciousness, so that the expression on her face could be controlled. At least in front of Pharaoh Crane, she could not show any difference. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. His eyelashes were wet with sweat. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth tightly as she raised her languid and calm eyes to look at Pharaoh He. She didn't hear what Pharaoh He said clearly. Moreover, she no longer had the energy to continue Pharaoh He's words. He just stood there quietly watching Pharaoh Crane's actions, compared to retorting back. Chapter 34-33. Pharaoh He's face was extremely unsightly. The veins on his forehead bulged and his eyes were sinister. He raised his hand, flipped his palm and shouted angrily, "You don't know what's good for you." As soon as he finished speaking, Pharaoh He's attack had already rushed forward. Carrying a gloomy and evil aura, and after becoming a corpse puppet, his profound strength had skyrocketed. The two combined together. That horrifying energy fluctuation caused the evil aura in the hall to continuously gather. Old Man Song glanced back and took a look at Yiqing Luo's current state. His face darkened. He said to Xianghu, "Protect the girl, I will go meet him." Xianghu looked at Old Man Song worriedly. After contracting with Yiqing Luo, Xianghu naturally knew that Old Man Song was just a tool spirit in Yiqing Luo's hands. The strength of an artifact spirit could only be unleashed by relying on the artifact spirit that was attached to the artifact spirit. As for the artifact spirit itself, even if it left the divine artifact, it could only be considered a spirit body. Just like Yiqing Luo's current state. He couldn't cooperate with Old Man Song to release the power of the artifact spirit. "Don't worry about me." Old Man Song's figure swayed. The white robe, which seemed to be glowing with white light, turned into an afterimage and met Pharaoh He's attack head-on. Xianghu was unable to dissuade her and could only quickly return to Yiqing Luo's side, opened his own turtle shell and protected her behind him. Originally, Xianghu was very worried about Old Man Song. But after seeing the scene before him, Xianghu's tense heart finally calmed down. Old Man Song was extremely fast. It was so fast that Pharaoh Crane could not react in time. In just a few breaths of time, Pharaoh He was already firmly controlled by Old Man Song's attacks. Xianghu was not the only one who was shocked. Even Pharaoh He looked at the white-haired, white-browed old man in disbelief. For an artifact spirit to be able to transform into a physical body and leave the divine artifact it was attached to was already very astonishing. Who would have thought that this artifact spirit would actually possess such formidable strength? Although Old Man Song's movements were still somewhat stiff and uncoordinated, it was as if he hadn't exercised for many years and wasn't used to it yet. However, all of his attacks and counterattacks were so precise that Pharaoh Crane could not parry them. Was this the legendary artifact spirit of a divine artifact? Pharaoh he stared at Old Man Song with greed in his eyes. Even Xianmu couldn't help but shift his gaze onto Yiqing Luo's fingers. Evidently, they took Old Man Song to be the artifact spirit of the blue water divine artifact. Pharaoh he dodged Old Man Song's attack. Looking at Old Man Song's menacing momentum, the more he fought, the fiercer he became. Pharaoh he glanced at Xianmu from the corner of his eyes. The two of them exchanged glances. Suddenly Pharaoh he leaped up. His entire body's evil aura intersected with his Xian energy, emitting a whistling sound of a hurricane. Meanwhile, Xianmu moved his feet. His figure speedily shifted towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Xianmu's target was not only Yiqing Luo's life, but also the azure aqua ring on her finger. Bang! There was a loud rumble. Xianmu's Xian energy was blocked by Xiangui's tortoise shell. On top of the tortoise shell, the snake-like creature opened its scarlet mouth, revealing its sharp fangs and bit towards Xianmu. At the moment when Xiangui counterattacked, Xianmu had quickly evaded. This movement made Old Man Song aware of Pharaoh he and Xianmu's plan. He was just about to turn around and drive Xianmu away. Chapter 34-34. Get out of my way. Old Man Song's expression was solemn as he moved his palm. The violent profound energy turned into a chaotic hurricane as it exploded on Pharaoh he's body. The momentum was ferocious, like the firmament of the universe, causing one to sway. Pharaoh he's eyes widened in horror as he had yet to evade. The next moment he was completely engulfed by that hurricane. At the same time, in one of the palaces outside the palace, a man dressed in a black brocade robe who was meditating suddenly opened his eyes. His inky black pupils were suffused with a cold and treacherous glint. He looked precisely in the direction of the palace. As he squinted his sinister eyes, his entire expression suddenly became gloomy and ruthless. This power? It's him? After Old Man Song broke free from Pharaoh he's attack, he quickly rushed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. But he had barely moved a few steps. He saw Pharaoh he, who was engulfed by his palm, had once again appeared in front of him. Pharaoh he's robe was torn, his hair was disheveled and he looked extremely disheveled. But his face was filled with a crazy grin. You can't kill me. You can't kill me. Originally he thought that he was dead meat. But under Old Man Song's powerful attack, he didn't feel any pain at all. And he was able to walk out of that palm strike unscathed. I am a corpse puppet. I am an immortal corpse puppet. Pharaoh he opened his arms wide and laughed crazily. Immortal. This made Pharaoh he's eyes more confident. He was no longer afraid of any attack from Old Man Song. He was completely unafraid of death as he once again pounced towards Old Man Song. Being entangled by Pharaoh he who was unafraid of death. Old Man Song wanted to stop Xianmu's action but was stopped. The new function unlocked by Pharaoh he made Xianmu's battle intent rise. Since he was immortal, what was there to be afraid of about this stinky turtle? The thought of Xiang dying tragically on the battlefield. The butterfly saint technique also said that Xiang was dismembered by Yiqing Luo's gang of brothers, not even a complete corpse. The hatred in Xianmu's eyes gradually grew stronger. He stared deadly at Yiqing Luo who was leaning against the wall. Suddenly her lips curled upwards as she sneered, ha ha ha. I didn't expect the heroine Yiqing Luo would also be like a dead dog lying on the ground. He pointed at Yiqing Luo as he said word by word, your body totally can't move right. No wonder based on your character you actually allowed Pharaoh he to insult you verbally and remained unmoved. Ha ha ha. No matter how Xianmu mocked and ridiculed him, the girl leaning against the wall still didn't make a sound. He only opened his calm eyes and looked indifferently in the direction where Pharaoh he and Old Man Song were fighting. Xianmu's heart was beating like a drum. He wasn't sure if Yiqing Luo was so arrogant that she didn't put him in her eyes. Or was she really too weak to move, too weak to reply to his mockery? His fists clenched. Just as he was contemplating on how to break through the black tortoise's turtle shell protection, to probe Yiqing Luo. Suddenly, while Pharaoh he and Old Man Song were fighting, a white light flickered in the hall. Xianmu's eyes were stung by the flash. He turned his head and blocked the direction of the white light. But his gaze fell on Yiqing Luo's face. The young girl was still expressionless, facing the white light. There was no change in her eyes. Like a stone statue without a soul. Soul? Chapter 34-35. Right. soul. In Yiqing Luo's calm eyes, there was not a trace of spirit and soul. In other words, Yiqing Luo's so-called calmness and indifference were all pretended. Perhaps she herself was not even conscious, was she? This thought made Xianmu's heart surge with ecstasy. He stared at Yiqing Luo, as if the girl in front of him was already a corpse lying there. And the azure dew ring on the girl's finger seemed to have fallen into his hand. Thinking of this, Xianmu at this moment, where was there any fear and dread? Anyway, he was already a corpse puppet. No matter what Shen-gui wanted to do to him, he would be fine. As long as he could kill Yiqing Luo, not only to avenge Xiang, he could also get all the divine weapons and sacred beasts from Yiqing Luo. Greed made Xianmu's eyes burst out a wolf's light. He madly rushed towards Yiqing Luo. Ignoring Shen-gui's hard tortoise shell, the snake-like dragon opened its scarlet mouth and bit his little thing. Xianmu's desperate attack method. Even Shen-gui couldn't bear it. After all, Shen-gui's soul had just reunited, and it had just adapted from the human body to the black tortoise's body. Under Xianmu's fierce attack, Shen-gui stood firm, his body in front of Yiqing Luo slightly swayed. Suddenly, the snake dragon-like little thing wrapped around his back let out a blood-curdling scream. Xianmu didn't know when he broke free from the sharp fangs and grabbed the snake-like dragon's head. The little thing struggled, but its head was strangled and it lost the ability to attack. On the contrary, Xianmu, after the successful counterattack, vented all his anger on this little thing. At his fingertips, profound qi condensed. Snake, snake. Shen-gui felt the little thing's pain and anxiously called out its name. The huge tortoise shell opened, trying to cover the little thing in the shell. The unsolved mystery had been solved. The snake-like dragon wrapped around Shen-gui's back was a snake. Xianmu seemed to have noticed Shen-gui's action. He suddenly raised his head. His eyes were scarlet and ferocious, and his facial features were distorted. You want to save this beast? Let's see how you're going to save her. Following his words, his profound strength began to skyrocket. The little thing struggled even more painfully. The expression on Xianmu's face was filled with madness. Bite me. Bite. Little bastard, I'm going to cut you into. Before he could finish his words, his voice suddenly stopped. Xianmu widened his eyes. His throat tightened. A cold hand was strangling his neck. His hand was bone-chilling. It was as if frost was covering his neck. The strength of the 5 fingers gripping his neck made him feel as if he had lost all his strength. Xianmu loosened his grip. Snake softly fell on Shen-gui's back. Snake, snake. Shen-gui was worried about the snake on his back, but after seeing the scene in front of him, he was even more worried. Master, you. Xianmu's throat tightened and both of his hands twisted his neck. But the more he tried to twist it, the strength of the neck was greater, almost choking him until he couldn't breathe. Xianmu's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at the figure in front of him. The young lady's expression was indifferent, her eyes were still so calm, without any emotion. She just strangled his neck. Chapter 34-36. The strong wind danced wildly. The young lady's flame robe billowed and even the air seemed to be dyed with a circle of blood red. She squinted her eyes, her deep pupils exuded a chilling coldness, and a faint trace of blood light flashed. Want to kill me? Want to take away the vast water artifact? She opened her mouth, and there was a hint of coldness in her voice. There was not a trace of emotion in her eyes. Xianmu widened his eyes in fear and trembled all over. His neck was clasped so tightly that he could no longer spit out a word. Yiqing Luo smiled. Her pink lips curled up into a smile, making her beautiful face look like a poppy in full bloom. Even if the corner of her mouth was raised, there was no expression on her face. It was hard to conceal her breathtaking beauty. Under that peerlessly beautiful smile, Xianmu only felt that smile was like a summon from hell. He couldn't help but tremble all over, the space was indescribable. Yiqing Luo chuckled and lowered her eyes. Her gaze lightly swept over Shen-gui. Immediately, the other hand raised and clasped Xianmu's right hand which was hanging weakly by his side. Ah! A scream came out from Xianmu's mouth, only to see a red light flashed past. Xianmu's right hand was cut into 2. The bright red blended with the splattering blood. His hand fell to the ground and rolled a few times. Xianmu's body trembled like a sieve, staring at Yiqing Luo with a face full of fear. No, impossible, how could you? How could you? He clearly saw that Yiqing Luo's eyes were dull as if she had lost her soul. Wasn't that the same as what the palace lord said? Yiqing Luo's willpower collapsed. Yiqing Luo would lose consciousness and soul. Let the secluded palace control it? But how could Yiqing Luo counterattack? Could it be that she deliberately pretended to lose consciousness to lure him into the trap? The most important thing was, he was now a corpse puppet. Undead corpse puppets were not afraid of pain and they were immortal. But why could he feel the pain? Xianmu suppressed the speculation in his heart, widened his eyes and looked at the right hand that was chopped off on the ground. No, I am a corpse puppet, I am immortal. However, no matter how Xianmu brainwashed himself, he wanted to use his will to make the severed hand return to his body. That hand just lay there quietly without any intention of moving. You used this hand to injure Shengui just now. Yiqing Luo calmly opened her mouth. His words were cold and emotionless. Xianmu's body trembled as fear spread. Immediately after, the young lady's fingertips moved. The glowing flame fan, which was as red as a raging flame, shot out a red light. The red light landed on the half of the palm on the ground. Bang! With a loud explosion, the hand was directly blown to pieces. No, Xianmu screamed and struggled. However, the word, no, came out of his mouth. Not a single word came out from his throat. He did not need to breathe at all. But right now, the pain of suffocation was spreading in his chest. Just like in the next moment, he would die from lack of oxygen. And this hand. Yiqing Luo smiled slightly again. As her cold voice fell, Xianmu's other wrist was directly chopped off. Once again it turned into ashes. No matter how Xianmu begged for mercy, Yiqing Luo did not loosen her hand. Her expression did not change in the slightest. Chapter 34-37. He was like a toy. Watching his limbs being cut off bit by the glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands. He had to bear the pain of his body being torn apart. Then, watching the parts that were cut off bit by bit turned into minced meat and splattered in the hall. And he could not die, nor could he faint. He could clearly feel the feeling of every part of his body. He could also clearly see how his body was cut off. This kind of torture was even more painful than letting him die directly. Xianmu could not understand. He was already the newest and most complete undead puppet. The other defective and semi-finished products could not feel the pain, impervious to fire and water. Even if they were knocked down to the ground, they could still continue to climb up. Even if their limbs were cut off, they could still use their own bones as weapons. Not to mention this new type of complete corpse puppet. He remembered when he was used as a test subject. After he was cut in half by the people from the secluded palace, the two parts of his body would be reassembled. Why not now? Why couldn't he reassemble now? Master, I am fine, Snake is also fine, don't be angry. Shengui comforted Yiqing Luo in a low voice. Xianmu ignored Yiqing Luo's increasingly pale face because of fear. But Shengui saw it clearly. Following Yiqing Luo's counterattack, more cold sweat seeped out of Yiqing Luo's forehead. Shengui knew that the master was avenging Snake. He struggled to fight with his body. Its duty was to protect the master and not let the master suffer any harm. And not let the master suffer more serious injuries because of it. If Miss knew that it did not protect the master well, Miss would definitely not care about it. Hearing Shengui's voice, Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. She took a deep breath to suppress the dull pain in her head and the feeling of being in a trance. She glanced at Xianmu, who had fallen on the ground, and slowly leaned on Shengui's back. The little thing that was called a snake immediately wrapped around her arm and rubbed against it in a fawning manner. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes. All the counterattacks just now had exhausted all her strength, especially when he was dealing with Xianmu. She could feel the dull pain in her head becoming more and more obvious, making it difficult for her to endure. This was the goal of the person behind the palace of gloomy darkness. She really killed Xianmu. Lingering around Xianmu's body, shrouding a ball of evil qi. They would all enter her body. She slowly raised her hand. The glowing flame fan at his fingertips flickered with a bright light. A bright red light. Imprinted in her eyes. Faintly, a wisp of black qi began to linger. She might not be able to hold on much longer. A Xian, in her mind, the man's peerlessly handsome face appeared. Master. Shengui realized that something was wrong with Yiqing Luo's mood. He immediately shouted. At this moment, a terrifying energy fluctuation surged within the palace. The sound of something tearing through the air was extremely clear in this palace. In the next instant, Old Man Tsang and Pharaoh He, who were locked in battle, were suddenly blasted away by a strand of energy. Old Man Tsang seized the opportunity and speedily returned to Yiqing Luo's side. One hand clasped Yiqing Luo's wrist. "Lass, wake up." Old Man Song transmitted his own energy into Yiqing Luo's body. Chapter 34-38. It's really you. A gloomy and sinister voice echoed in the air. It was the voice of the person behind the Palace of Darkness. That person was back again? Ah. I didn't expect that after waiting for so many years you're actually here. The gloomy voice let out a creepy laughter. What are you talking about? Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as her breathing became heavy. Under the transmission of Old Man Song's energy, her state of mind calmed down. But her body was weak and she probably didn't have the energy to fight anymore. The reappearance of the person behind the Palace of Darkness made Yiqing Luo's emotions tensed up. Especially the words of the person behind the scenes, she couldn't understand it. Green ghost. The gloomy voice was mixed with excitement as it spat out two words. Yiqing Luo felt Old Man Song's body stiffen. Immediately, she heard the voice of the person behind the Palace of Darkness rang again. I didn't expect that. You've been hiding from me for thousands of years and finally I still found you. That frightening energy ripple that enveloped the palace was still continuously increasing. The legendary Azure Dew Bracelet spirit. When she was still alive, you were so arrogant, condescending and supercilious, but now, you're actually reduced to taking care of a girl from the lower realm. That person's mouth was full of ridicule mixed with a joyful and carefree laughter. Yiqing Luo looked sideways at Old Man Song and held his hand tightly. Old Man Song, that person was talking about you? Green Ghost. Was this Old Man Song's real name? The Azure Dew Bracelet spirit. Who was the she that person was talking about? The previous owner of the Azure Dew Bracelet? This bracelet was rumored to be her Yi family's hidden family, an heirloom passed down from their ancestors. According to the ancestral records, this had the power to destroy the heaven and earth. Otherwise, those Yi family's elders wouldn't have tricked her into going to the Yi family's ancestral grave to dig out the Azure Dew Bracelet. They even risked their lives to snatch the Azure Dew Bracelet. So, the she in that person's mouth was most likely referring to the ancestor of the Yi clan? Her ancestor had once made the Azure Dew Bracelet so glorious? To be able to make Old Man Song look down on everyone and everything? Old Man Song reached out and held her small hand. A low voice entered her ears. Lass, this old man has let you down? His tone was filled with self-blame and helplessness. Even if Old Man Song didn't say it clearly, Yiqing Luo also understood what Old Man Song's apology was for. Old Man Song was blaming himself. Because of him. Once again that person was lured over. It was also because of him. The fact that Yiqing Luo possessed the Azure Dew Bracelet was also exposed. That person was very ambitious. It was so big that it wanted to dominate everything in the world. If that person knew of the existence of the Azure Dew Bracelet, they would definitely think of ways to snatch it. With her current strength, not to mention guarding the Azure Dew Bracelet, whether or not he could survive that person's attack was a problem. Yiqing Luo shook her head. You took action to protect me. She revealed a faint smile towards Old Man Song. Then he turned his head and looked forward. Because of the appearance of the person behind the Palace of Darkness, Pharaoh, he stood by the side, not daring to move at all. A pair of malicious eyes stared fiercely at Old Man Song, who was standing beside Yiqing Luo. Obviously he understood Old Man Song's identity. Not the artifact spirit of some Azure Dew artifact, but the artifact spirit of the legendary Azure Dew Bracelet, which made one's heart fill with greed. Only, no matter how many thoughts he had in his heart, but in front of the person behind the Palace of Darkness. Chapter 34-39. In the darkness, Yiqing Luo's delicate body suddenly stiffened. Her whole body suddenly felt like it was immersed in an icehouse. The coldness eroded her. Her pupils shrank and the hand holding Old Man Song suddenly tightened. Someone was watching her. It was the person behind the scenes from the Dark Palace. She couldn't sense where that person was in the hall, but she could clearly feel the gaze coming from that person. Yiqing Luo felt as though that person had seen through her clothes and seen through her very soul. It made her feel uncomfortable all over. The Azure Dew Bracelet is in your hand. A cold voice reverberated in the hall. Yiqing Luo slightly pursed her lips to keep her consciousness awake. You can run to the lower realm without any scruples. Why can't the Azure Dew Bracelet be in my hand? Her voice paused slightly, her lips curled and revealed a sarcastic smile. I suddenly understand. You are a dignified person with a high status in the upper realm. Why would you go through so much trouble to invade the lower realm? Oh. That person's tone rose and sneered. Although I know you are stalling for time, but I really want to hear what you understand. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and adjusted her sitting posture with Old Man Song's strength. Immediately, her lips curled up. Your purpose from the beginning to the end is for the Azure Dew Bracelet. You know that the Azure Dew Bracelet is in the Nirvana realm, you want to get it, right? There was a moment of silence in the hall. The silent atmosphere permeated the hall. Xian Mu, who was lying on the ground, could not bear such an atmosphere. He cried out in fear, Palace Lord, Palace Lord? Yiqing Luo is sinister and cunning, don't waste time with her, her consciousness is no longer clear, as long as Palace Lord personally takes action, you will definitely be able to control. Xian Mu's words had not finished. Suddenly, a sinister force like a sharp blade shot straight. It fiercely pierced into Xian Mu's mouth. All of Xian Mu's words turned into that miserable scream. Then he could no longer make any sound. What I want to do, it is not up to you to instruct me. That cold voice sounded. Xian Mu's entire body was immediately shrouded by a black qi and swallowed. After the black qi dispersed. On the ground only Xian Mu's clothes were left. Yiqing Luo witnessed all these and the expression on her face changed slightly. Just a puppet and you can even eat it, your taste is quite heavy. Yiqing Luo, in the lower realm, there's still such an amazing existence like you. It makes this seat, to develop a strong interest towards you. That person's gaze became even more scorching. Yiqing Luo had nowhere to hide. He could only endure the feeling of being stared at. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in you. Ha ha ha. That person laughed. His laughter was still so eerie and terrifying, causing people who heard it to feel their scalps go numb. That laughter lasted for a long time. Yiqing Luo didn't open her mouth to interrupt that person's laughter. When the man stopped laughing, she slowly curled her lips and said, in other words, I guessed right. Yes, you're right. I know that Azure Ghost is in the lower realms, but... The man paused. My purpose in coming to the lower realms isn't just for the Azure Dew Bracelet. After that, the man said, even if you're right, so what? Don't tell me you can still stop this seat? I can't stop you. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly, the hand on her finger moved slightly. Chapter 3440. What did you say? That man's tone paused for a moment. Suddenly he seemed to have felt something. That man cursed silently, damn it! A bunch of trash. Just as he finished his words, the suffocating spiritual pressure that had enveloped the entire hall disappeared in an instant. This aura disappeared extremely quickly. So fast that Old Man Song and Xianxia had no time to react. Not only that, even the black sinister aura that lingered in the surroundings was gradually dissipating. Bam! The ground suddenly trembled violently. The indestructible palace with no exit, under this tremor, collapsed with a loud crash. Gravel flew and dust curled up. A tall figure stood outside the collapsed stone wall. Purple robe fluttered along with the strong wind. When a gap appeared in the palace, that figure quickly rushed into the palace. When she saw that figure rushing over, Yiqing Luo's tensed heart finally relaxed. The hand that was covering her fingertips also slowly slid down. The next moment she felt herself falling into a warm embrace. That embrace warm and generous. The elegant scent of sandalwood calmed her anxious and uneasy heart. Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered, opened her eyes, looking at the face in front of her. Xian really came. He really rushed over. This man every time was like a god descending from the sky, appearing in front of her, protecting her, guarding her. Lil Luo, I'm here. Purple robe fluttered. He tightly embraced the young lady in his arms, looking at the young lady's pale face and the cold sweat that seeped out. His eyes were filled with pity. You caught that person? He is the real mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness, and he already knows. The Azure Dew Bracelet, the existence of Old Man Song. Yiqing Luo's little hand grasped Diamo Xian's lapel, trying hard to stay awake as she asked. Diamo Xian grasped her little hand and bent down to kiss her pale lips. No, when I came over, that person had already run away. That Old Man Song. Old Man Song. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened as she turned her head to look at Old Man Song beside her, incomparably worried. Diamo Xian turned her head around and his large palm wiped the cold sweat on her forehead. I'm here, it'll be fine. I'm fine. Old Man Song sighed with a heavy heart. The Azure Dew Bracelet will only belong to you. Even if that person wants to forcefully take it, the Azure Dew Bracelet will not belong to that person. You don't need to worry. He paused and looked at Diamo Xian, Take good care of her, I'll go back to replenish my energy first. Saying that, he didn't wait for Yiqing Luo's response. He turned into a wisp of green smoke and entered the azure dew bracelet. How could Yiqing Luo not see the worry on old man Song's face, and that expression which was filled with thoughts? Just as he was about to open his mouth to say something, her pink lips were pressed by Diamo Xian's index finger. What you need to do now is to have a good rest and expel the evil yin qi from your body. Don't think about anything else. Diamo Xian's gentle voice seemed to be able to pinch water out. That pair of glistening peach blossom eyes gazed deeply at Yiqing Luo, bearing the weight of thousands of peach blossom spring water. Yiqing Luo was once again mesmerized by the handsome man. Don't. This sweet and beautiful moment. However, he was interrupted by the sound of stumbling footsteps. Yiqing Luo nestled in Diamo Xian's arms as she turned her head. Chapter 34-41. Because he was too afraid and terrified. Pharaoh Crane's footsteps were staggering, and occasionally tripped by the gravel beneath his feet. Apparently he had been badly frightened. Yiqing Luo's gaze turned towards Pharaoh Crane. Diamo Xian's line of sight also turned over. After that, he stretched out his hand. A shapeless force grabbed Pharaoh Crane's neck and pulled him back. That shapeless force threw Pharaoh Crane to the corner of the palace. Pharaoh Crane's internal organs felt like they had been ruptured as his face twitched in pain. Spare me. Overlord, I beg you to spare me. Pharaoh Crane begged for mercy without any hesitation. In front of absolute power. All his dignity did not exist. He only wanted to live. Earlier when I rushed over, there were quite a number of people from the dark forces among those who obstructed me. Diamo Xian's expression was cold and indifferent. Pharaoh Crane trembled in fear. That is that person's palace lord's arrangement. I don't know anything. I don't know. Diamo Xian's brows rose slightly as he suddenly clenched his fingers. A burst of purple profound light enveloped Pharaoh Crane. That profound light was like a ball of burning flame, burning Pharaoh Crane. Pharaoh Crane let out a miserable shriek. Facing Pharaoh Crane's miserable cries, Diamo Xian was not moved at all. You hurt my little Luo, you deserve to die. That purple flame continued to burn Pharaoh Crane. Slowly he turned into ashes. Diamo Xian adjusted the person in his arms to a comfortable position and immediately strode towards the exit. Yiqing Luo's little hand grabbed his robe. Xian, I want to see that mural again. She pointed towards the direction of the mural. Diamo Xian carried her and walked towards the mural. When he saw the carving of a human figure on the mural, he was stunned. Diamo Xian's eyes flickered slightly. Xian. Yiqing Luo raised her head and looked at Diamo Xian. Do you think this person could possibly be my Yi family's ancestor? Diamo Xian lowered his eyes and met the young lady's gaze. Why do you say so? Old man Tsang said that she is the Empress of Divine Emperors. Yiqing Luo smiled slightly as her vision returned to the mural. Those surrounding her are vast water god armaments. And, to find the vast water divine weapon and open the enchantment of the vast water divine weapon, only my divine phoenix profound heart jade can do it. I feel that between me and her, there is definitely a connection. He had heard the people behind Abyss Palace mention it before. The previous owner of the Azure Dew bracelet. To be able to make old man Tsang look down on everything and everyone, this meant that the previous master of the Azure Dew bracelet had a status and strength that was above all living things. He then thought about old man Tsang's reaction when he saw the mural. Basically, one could deduce that there was a high possibility that the Divine Emperor's surname was Yi, and he was her ancestor. Diamo Xian didn't say a word and just rubbed her little head. Together with her, they looked at the human-shaped totem carved on the mural. After an unknown period of time, Yiqing Luo retracted her vision and closed her eyes. Immediately, she stretched out her hands and hooked them around Diamo Xian's neck. Forget it, don't think too much about it. When we reach the upper realm and find out about my background, everything will naturally become clear. As soon as he finished speaking, her expression suddenly changed. When she stretched out her hand to hook Diamo Xian's neck, her arm seemed to have brushed against something sticky. Between her nostrils, she could smell a very faint smell of blood. Chapter 34-42. Yiqing Luo's actions weren't considered gentle, but she managed to avoid touching the skin on Diamo Xian's chest. After the front was pulled open, his pectoral muscles were revealed. But at this moment, on his chest, there was a large pool of blood that was shocking to the eye. That was obviously the coagulated blood from the wound, and deliberately used a perfume bag to cover up the smell of blood. Ah Xian, what's going on? Blood, dyed Yiqing Luo's eyes red. She stared at the large wound in a daze. The dull pain in her head, which had finally subsided, once again invaded her brain. Nothing. Diamo Xian closed his lapel again and hugged her to leave. Don't touch the wound. Yiqing Luo didn't even dare to get close to his chest. Thinking of earlier, she nestled in Diamo Xian's arms. She unconsciously touched his wound. Her heart felt uncomfortable, as if it was pricked by a needle. Be good, let's go back first. Diamo Xian slightly withdrew his strength and pulled her body closer to him. I won't hurt. How can it not hurt? I can walk on my own. Ah Xian, put me down, don't touch your wound. Yiqing Luo struggled, trying to get down. Diamo Xian's lips curled slightly. I don't feel pain now, if you move again it will hurt. Yiqing Luo was so frightened that she didn't dare to move. Diamo Xian carried her and slowly walked out of the hall. Everything around was covered in white fog, making the surrounding buildings look extremely illusory. Every place here, every palace, was filled with nobility and luxury. But Yiqing Luo didn't have the mood to look at the surrounding environment. Her gaze was always fixed on Diamo Xian's face, looking at the man's peerless elegance, his calm expression. Her heart was in dull pain. How could anyone hurt Ah Xian? Her thoughts kept wandering. Suddenly Yiqing Luo smelled a strong smell of blood. She was stunned and suddenly regained her senses. She saw she was carried by Diamo Xian, and she didn't know when they had walked to a long flight of stairs. Looking at the stairs, she couldn't see the end. And around the stairs and above the stairs, corpses that were dripping with blood were lying on the ground. Blood stained the ground. In the air, the smell of blood was very strong. It's still fresh. Obviously, these people had just died not long ago. Yiqing Luo recalled the mastermind of secluded Darkness Palace. Before Diamo Xian arrived, he said something. Damn it. That bunch of trash. Trash? Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled. His gaze swept across the two sides, as well as the small mountain of corpses in front of him. There were at least tens of thousands of people. Moreover, judging from the residual energy in the surroundings, it could be seen that there was still some residual energy in the surroundings. None of these 10,000 people were weak. This was not the Nirvana realm. The strength of the person beside the mastermind was definitely not something that the small fries in the Nirvana realm could compare to. Otherwise, Ah Xian wouldn't have been injured. Her throat suddenly tightened. Ah Xian? These people must be the mastermind behind the Nether Palace, specially arranged here to stop Diamo Xian. That was why that person knew that she was dragging the time, waiting for Diamo Xian to rush over, and because of his curiosity, he allowed her to speak out her own guess. That was because that person had timed everything perfectly. But that person had forgotten about it. Diamo Xian rushed to Yiqing Luo's side. It was because of her. That was why Ah Xian was injured. Chapter 34-43. Then your injury. Yiqing Luo bit her lower lip lightly as she looked at the chest that was just inches away from her. She didn't even dare to move. She was afraid of touching Diamo Xian's wound. Diamo Xian only smiled. It's alright, it's already over. The most important thing is that you're fine. Yiqing Luo was touched and her heart ached at the same time. After walking out of the Abyss Palace, Xian Gui returned to Yiqing Luo's pet space. Diamo Xian carried Yiqing Luo in his arms as he sat on the back of the nine-tailed fox and rushed towards the East Continent's battlefield. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo raised her head and met with the man's deep pupils. Do you feel that the minute you rushed over to that palace, the mastermind of secluded Darkness Palace fled the scene, was because they were afraid of your ability, or worried that you would recognize them? Both. Diamo Xian answered as he held her wrist and checked her pulse. You have come to the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. Can the East Water Continent hold on? That person. Would he have rushed towards East Continent after escaping? Yiqing Luo's eyes drooped down as her face was filled with worry. I won't. As Diamo Xian said that, he took out a medicinal pill from the profound dragon ring and fed it into Yiqing Luo's mouth. East Tide Continent has the World Group, and there's also Ghost Marshal and God Thief etc. And if I didn't guess wrongly, Guiyu, Ghost Doctor etc. should have already rushed over to the battlefield. Hearing their names, Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief. If they are around? Just as the words were about to leave her mouth, she suddenly stopped. In his mind, the conversation between the Ghost King and Holy Pirate appeared. She was startled. Master Ghost Doctor, Teacher Guiyu and the others, as well as Ghost Warrior and Saint Thief, actually know each other, right? Yes. Dmo Xian nodded. And Ghost King. Yi Qing Luo recalled the time when she crossed hands with Ghost King, Ghost King's shocking ability. They are not from Nirvana realm. Dmo Xian nodded again. In fact, from a long time ago. Yi Qing Luo already had this guess in her heart. Whether it was Guiyu or Ghost Doctor. It didn't matter if it was Holy Pirate or Ghost Warrior. There was also Zhou Mo, who was always together with Gui Wu. None of them were simple characters. But Yi Qing Luo had never asked about it. Because in Yi Qing Luo's eyes, they were all her mentors and helpful friends, her companions. They didn't want to talk about it. She would not interrogate him. Now from Dmo Xian's mouth she had gotten a definite answer. Yi Qing Luo didn't continue asking any further. They were here. They would definitely be able to defend the East Water Continent in this battle. Alright, take a rest first. Let the pill disperse the evil yin qi in your body so that you won't be affected by it. I'll wake you up when we reach the East Continent. Following Dmo Xian's gentle and magnetic voice, and his large palm that was gently caressing her back. Or perhaps it was because of the pill he had just swallowed. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were heavy as she shut her eyes. She tried to blink again. In the end he fell into a deep sleep. After an unknown period of time. By the time Yi Qing Luo opened her eyes again, it was quiet all around. The room was completely dark. It should be midnight. She wanted to get up, but she felt that her body was wet. It was like being soaked in water. It was sticky, which made her frown. Suddenly, a cold and deep voice of a young man rang in her ears. "Madam, you're awake." This voice. Yi Qing Luo's muddled thoughts gathered. Wind? Chapter 3444. 2 days and 2 nights? This figure made Yi Qing Luo slightly stunned. It's been 2 days and 2 nights? A Xian guarded me for 2 days and 2 nights? Yi Qing Luo propped herself up. When he stood up, he could even make the sound of splashing water. Yes, Wind replied. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and pressed hard between her brows. After sleeping for a long time, his muddled mind gradually regained a trace of clarity. The memories from before he fell asleep emerged in his mind. She suddenly raised her eyes, her face full of worry. He guarded me for 2 days and 2 nights. Then his injuries, have they been treated? No. Ah Feng's voice trembled a little. Since the Overlord carried you back to the room, he has not left your side at all. That fool? Yi Qing Luo was touched and her heart ached at the same time. An indescribable feeling spread from the bottom of his heart. Mistress, I have a request. Ah Feng suddenly knelt down. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips and spoke in a hoarse voice. Speak. She knew that Wind's request was definitely related to Dmo Xian. As expected, Ah Feng said seriously, I hope Mistress can persuade the Overlord to have a good rest. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips slightly harder. She lowered her eyelashes and clenched her slender fingers. He could still feel the wetness in his palms. She said, I will. In the darkness there was silence again. After a long while, Yi Qing Luo seemed to have thought of something as her hoarse voice sounded a little ethereal in the quiet room. Have you always been by Ah Xian's side? Yes, Wen replied. Then you should know. Ah Xian's injuries how came about? Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes, searching for Wen's figure in the darkness. Dmo Xian said that it wasn't the people behind the secluded palace who had specially arranged for those people to obstruct him. In that case it was definitely not those people who injured him. Based on Dmo Xian's strength, someone who could leave a wound on his chest simply didn't exist, and Dmo Xian did not want her to know the reason for his injury. Very likely, it was because of her. Ah Feng was silent and did not answer. This meant that Wind indeed knew the reason for Dmo Xian's injury. There was also indirect proof. Dmo Xian's injury was related to her. At the thought of this possibility, Yi Qing Luo's heart felt a tugging pain. Ah Feng, Ah Xian was injured to save me. I have the right to know. Her voice was a little hoarse. Ah Feng was silent again. He seemed to be considering whether he should say it or not. In the end, he still gritted his teeth and said, the geography of the Palace of Darkness is complicated. The map provided by the 3,000 peach blossoms did not clearly depict the interior of the Palace of Darkness. As soon as the D-Zun arrived at the Palace of Darkness, he was trapped at the entrance by the people of the Palace of Darkness. His Majesty spent a lot of effort to defeat the people from the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and searched for you everywhere, but he still found nothing. Hearing this, Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and caressed the profound phoenix ring on her fingertip. Inside the Palace of Darkness, the Netherworld Dragon Ring and the Netherworld Phoenix Ring had never sensed each other, until Dmo Xian rushed to the outer perimeter of the palace. Yiqing Luo then felt the subtle connection between the profound Phoenix Ring and the profound Dragon Ring. Moreover, when Dmo Xian had just arrived at the Palace of Seclusion, he was besieged by the human wave tactic. This also meant that the mastermind of the Nether Palace had long known that Dmo Xian was on his way here. Chapter 34-45. There was no connection between the profound Phoenix Ring and the profound Dragon Ring. In the complicated terrain of the Palace of Gloom, it was indeed extremely difficult for Dmo Xian to locate Yiqing Luo's whereabouts. Yiqing Luo clenched her fingers tightly and didn't interrupt Win's words. Feng continued, although Dizun can't pinpoint your exact location, he can sense your pain. Just as the Overlord was about to tear down the Palace of Darkness, someone showed up and said that he knew where you were being held, and that he could bring the Overlord there to save you. Alone? Who was it? This subordinate can only confirm that it was a man. He's wearing a black cloak so I can't see his face. Feng replied, that man is very familiar with the Palace of Darkness and has a very high position in the Palace of Darkness. Listening to such a description, an image emerged in Yiqing Luo's mind. It was the Palace Lord of the Dark Palace that he saw in the illusionary land. The strange palace master of the Dark Palace who seemed to have known her for a long time. If it was really that person, Yiqing Luo was really a little dazed. It could be deduced from the words of the person behind the Palace of Darkness. On the surface, the palace master of Gloomy Palace was the disciple of the person behind the scenes. That person, why did it seem like he didn't want her to die? Whether it was in the land of illusion or fighting with the Ghost King, or at the Palace of Darkness, to lead the way for Dmo Xian to save her. It was as if they didn't want to see her die. The man is willing to lead the way, but he also made a request, Feng said. Request. Yiqing Luo was stunned and suddenly she seemed to have understood something, but she needed to verify it as she opened her mouth. What is the request? Feng said, restrain your dark force and don't dodge. Take his attack. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. His body trembled uncontrollably. Her voice was dry and hoarse. He wanted to speak, but his throat was dry and stinging. However, she still held on and said hoarsely, so? Xian's injuries were caused by that person's attack. Yes. Feng kowtowed hard. The Overlord really values you. I hope you can treat him well, mistress. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes tightly. He suppressed the sourness in his eyes. She took a deep breath and was about to ask Feng to get up. Suddenly there was a sound outside the door. Soon after, the entire room was filled with the fragrance of sandalwood. Feng, you talk too much. His voice was cold, with a hint of coldness. It was as if a chill had penetrated through the skin, wrapping around them. Feng knelt on the ground and his body stiffened. After hearing that familiar voice, Yiqing Luo's slightly moist eyelashes fluttered as she stretched out her hand towards the dim figure. Xian. Yiqing Luo's voice instantly dispelled the coldness from the man's body. Dmo Xian strode over. She didn't care that she had just taken a bath and changed her clothes. He held the dripping wet girl in his arms. The man's body still emitted the scent of someone who had just taken a bath. And on her body was picked up by the man. Not only was he dripping wet, but he was also giving off a fishy smell. Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned red. You just took a bath, let go of me first. She wanted to push the man away. However, the man hugged her even tighter. Chapter 34-46. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. The jealousy that she had suppressed surged up again. I'm sorry. Yiqing Luo bit her lips, feeling the warmth of the man. I made you worry. Dmo Xian held the girl in his arms and glanced at the other figure kneeling on the ground in the darkness. Go and receive your punishment. Yes. Wind cupped his fists and immediately stood up. He didn't even have the slightest intention of defending himself. Wait. Yiqing Luo called out and stopped Win's footsteps. Yiqing Luo popped her head out from Dmo Xian's arms and looked up at the man. I asked Win to say it, you can't blame him. Dmo Xian frowned slightly. Yiqing Luo raised her wet fingers and pinched his face. Win listens to me, that means he is smart and knows who is in charge of our family, who has the final say. Saying that, she pouted her lips proudly, raised her eyebrows and pretended to be aggressive as she pinched his face tightly. I am in charge, I have the final say, do you have any objections? No. Diamo Xian's brows stretched out and his eyes were filled with a doting smile. Our family, in charge? These few words softened Diamo Xian's heart. If you have no objections, then listen to me. Yiqing Luo released his face and gently rubbed the place where she pinched him. Immediately she looked at Wind. No need to receive the punishment, prepare hot water for me. Yes. Wind was very sensible and did not ask Diamo Xian whether he should listen to Yiqing Luo or not, because he knew better than anyone. As long as it was the matriarch's words, the overlord would absolutely listen to it. There was no need to ask for the overlord's opinion. Well, it was indeed the matriarch who was in charge and had the final say. Since they had the matriarch, the group of guardians all understood one truth. It was all right to offend the overlord. As long as they pleased the matriarch, they would be exempted from death. I have prepared the hot water, let me carry you over. Diamo Xian carried her out of the room. Wind, who was abandoned in the room. The overlord's possessiveness was too terrifying. Even the bath water was not willing to pass through others' hands. Could it be? The overlord intended to boil the bath water for the matriarch for the rest of her life? Diamo Xian carried her all the way to another room. Yiqing Luo could clearly hear the drip, drip, drip sound of water droplets falling onto the ground. She had a feeling of being messed up in the wind. She had only slept for 2 days and 2 nights before waking up. Why do I feel like I'm soaking in water? Yiqing Luo was carried to the chair beside the wooden barrel and sat down properly. The chair was even padded with cushions. The man began to scoop up water and adjust the temperature. In the dim light, Diamo Xian's figure was long and hazy. Yiqing Luo watched his every move. His heart was indescribably touched and warm. In the eyes of outsiders, this man was high and mighty, noble and elegant. But in front of her, he was willing to lower his head and do anything for her. Washing clothes for her. Wait on her as she bathed. Boil her bath water. Wait a minute. There were all kinds of things that others didn't even dare to think about. It was impossible to connect the two together. He was willing to do anything for her. Looking at the man, after testing the temperature of the water, he carried her up. Yiqing Luo's hands wrapped around his neck, her long and narrow eyes hooked into a demonic arc. Ah Xian, you've just finished bathing and I've dirtied you again, what should I do? Diamo Xian carried her and placed her into the wooden barrel. One hand untied the sticky robe on her. Chapter 34-47. That voice made one feel like they were about to get pregnant. Yiqing Luo's entire body turned limp. Her body was placed into the warm water. The heat diffused in all directions, blurring her delicate body. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes as she gave a comfortable sigh. She had yet to enjoy this soothing feeling. Suddenly, the man's slender fingers caressed her collarbone. As if she was electrocuted, Yiqing Luo's delicate body suddenly trembled. She opened her eyes as both her hands subconsciously grabbed the man's wrist. The purple embroidered purple sleeve robe floated on the water surface. From time to time, along with the water ripples, it collided against the skin on her chest. His hand was held by her. This posture seemed like she was asking for sex from him. Yiqing Luo's cheeks instantly turned red. Under the dense mist, she looked even more bashful. Lil Luo. The man's gaze fell on her. That gaze seemed to be burning with flames. Burning Yiqing Luo, her body and mind were heating up. Are you intending to take responsibility now? Diamo Xian slightly leaned forward, bent his head beside her ear as he asked softly. The scent of male hormones exploded her senses. The warm breath tickled her heartstrings. Yiqing Luo expressed that she could no longer withstand the temptation of the handsome man trap. Towards Diamo Xian's looks, she might not be able to resist it in this lifetime. She pursed her moist pink lips tightly as her long and narrow eyes stared at him coquettishly. This man obviously knew what she was thinking in her heart, and he even forced her to say it out personally. Yiqing Luo puffed out a stream of air from her nose. Following that, the hand which held his wrist pulled hard. The man's body covered the young lady's face. Even though Diamo Xian controlled his strength, half of his upper body also fell into the water bucket. Water splashed everywhere, drenched Diamo Xian's robe. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers hooked onto the man's lapel. Your clothes are wet, then take it off. Her fingers seemed to be half magical. With a slight movement, where it moved, the robe opened, revealing a large area of the man's chest muscles. Yiqing Luo suppressed the shyness in her heart, as her pink lips curled, hooked onto his neck with one hand and pulled again. Her lips imprinted on his lips. This kiss was out of control. Water splashed in all directions, but the temperature of the water did not drop as time passed. The room was filled with sweetness. When Yiqing Luo opened her eyes once again, it was the afternoon of the next day. As soon as she moved, her whole body felt sore and limp. This was the aftereffect of sleeping for 2 days and 2 nights and going through a great battle. She looked at herself. Her body felt refreshed and she was wrapped in a clean and soft undergarment. At least it wasn't as sticky and wet as before. The moment she moved, a big, warm palm held her little hand and sat on the side of the bed. Then a cup of warm water was sent to his lips. Yiqing Luo drank a few mouthfuls and heard the man's gentle voice ringing in her ear. "You're awake. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Are you hungry?" Her tone was so gentle that it could almost squeeze water out of it. "I'm a little hungry." After drinking the water, Yiqing Luo's throat felt better. "I'll bring you a bowl of porridge, wait for me." Diamo Xian kissed her forehead and gently urged, looking at the man's back as he walked out of the room. Yiqing Luo expressed that after a great battle, men would always show a gentler attitude than usual by 100 times. Did he know that torturing a woman until she fainted was wrong? Since he knew, didn't he know how to be gentle at that time? What's the use of being gentle after? Chapter 34-48. Not long after Diamo Xian left, the commotion at the entrance made Yiqing Luo roll her eyes. "Why are you all huddled at the entrance for? Come in if you want to." The noise at the door continued for a while. After that, a small head popped in. Kitty Lee blinked her quick-witted beautiful eyes as she beamed at Yiqing Luo, who was in the inner room. "Sister." Then another small head popped in. One after another. There were exactly 4 of them. Yiqing Luo glanced at the door. "Don't want to come in? Then I'll close." Hey, don't." Yan Xiaoyi was the first to jump into the room as she gave an ambiguous look at Yiqing Luo. "We were so worried about you. Can you bear to chase us away?" Yiqing Luo shot a glance at the ridicule on Yan Xiaoyi's face as her expression didn't change. "From your eyes, I can't see any worry. Can't you really tell that my eyes are filled with sincerity and worry?" Yan Xiaoyi moved closer to the bed, widening her eyes and smiling evilly as she blinked. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she met her eyes. "I can't tell." Yan Xiaoyi. After a while, she moved her body away. "I find that your skin is getting thicker and thicker." Tong Ziqing patted Yan Xiaoyi's shoulder. Immediately he walked to the bedside. His face was cold, but his eyes were filled with concern. "How is your body? Do you feel better?" "That's right, sister. How's your body?" "These few days, watching you soak in a ball of black water," Kitty's heart ached. Kitty Lee also pounced forward and acted like a spoiled child. "Black water?" Yiqing Luo recalled last night when she woke up. The feeling of being wet all over. It seemed like Diamo Xian had vaguely mentioned it. Because she had absorbed a large amount of evil Yin energy in the Dark Nether Palace's backlash barrier. Ghost Doctor said that if Diamo Xian had come a little later, the person behind the scenes in the Nether Palace might really be able to control Yiqing Luo completely. The black water that seeped out from Yiqing Luo's body. It was the combined efforts of Ghost Doctor and Diamo Xian to force out the evil qi from Yiqing Luo's body. The power of the evil Yin energy was too strong. Except for Diamo Xian. Even the Ghost Doctor couldn't get close to it, while expelling the evil Yin qi. Before Yiqing Luo regained her consciousness, he could not easily touch her delicate body. So when Yiqing Luo woke up, that was why he felt wet all over, as if he had been soaked in water. Yiqing Luo rubbed Kitty Lee's head and was just about to open her mouth to appease her. But they were interrupted by Yan Xiaoyi's teasing voice. "Do you still need to ask? With His Excellency Di Zun taking care of me, how could I not be good?" Saying that, he glanced meaningfully at the obvious red mark on Yiqing Luo's neck. There was a hint of mockery in his laughter. "Look at her blushing face. She can even communicate with His Majesty, so her body must have recovered." Yiqing Luo. This fellow, why was his words getting more and more shameless? Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at Yan Xiaoyi, ignoring her teasing words. He turned around and looked at Tong Ziqing, who was more serious. "I'm fine now, but I've been unconscious for so long. Has the Palace of Gloomy Shadows called a truce, or have they left the Nirvana realm?" Ever since Yiqing Luo woke up and discovered that she was still in the East Continent's royal palace, she then deduced that Nirvana realm hadn't lost this battle. Adding on to the fact that when she woke up, the surroundings were quiet and there weren't any war cries or war drums. Chapter 34-49. They should have left Nirvana realm. Tong Ziqing replied. Should? Yiqing Luo was puzzled. Kitty Lee nestled in her arms as she raised her head. Sister, you definitely don't know how shocking the battlefield became after you and Overlord brother-in-law left. Dean Gui Yu and Sir Ghost Doctor rushed over, Master Gui Wu, frivolous man and god thief had joined hands. Hearing these few names, Yiqing Luo understood. The minute they made a move, those Earth Realm royal army that Earth Emperor brought all died in their hands. Master Gui Wu even said that he would hand Earth Emperor over to the higher-ups to handle. Kitty Lee's eyes were sparkling like stars. Hand over to the higher-ups to handle? Looked like Nether Palace's actions this time round had completely infuriated Ghost Wu and the rest. The royal army of the land has been destroyed, and the Earth Emperor has disappeared. There are only a few pharaohs from the dark factions left, as well as Xuanhuan and Yuji leading the troops. Their morale has greatly decreased. Tong Ziqing continued. Just as their morale was greatly reduced, Sanyu seemed to have received news that the Palace Lord of Nether Palace had already left Nirvana realm, giving up the plan to invade Nirvana realm. Sanyu also followed closely and left. Yiqing Luo nodded. That Sanyu should have found out that the mastermind of Nether Palace had left. So he followed closely and left. The mastermind of Nether Palace discovered Old Man Song's existence, and discovered that she had the Azure Dew bracelet on her. Later on, Dmo Shen rushed over. That man immediately fled the scene. Sanyu also left Nirvana realm. This action had already made it clear. The revered sir that Ghost Hand Wu you mentioned was undoubtedly the mastermind of Nether Palace. That man hurriedly fled, and gave up the plan to invade Nirvana realm. Was he really afraid that Dmo Shen would discover his true face? Or because he found out that she had the Azure Dew bracelet and was thinking of another way to snatch the Azure Dew bracelet? No matter what the reason was for Nether Palace to give up the plan to invade Nirvana realm, at least now Nirvana realm is already protected. Tong Ziqing's lips curled upwards towards Yiqing Luo as she revealed an extremely shallow smile. Secluded Darkness Palace's disciples as well as those pharaohs have already been settled by various powerhouses' representatives. Secluded Darkness Palace no longer exists in Nirvana realm, at least. In the future, when the World Mercenary Group becomes even stronger, such a thing like this will not happen again. That's right, at least the current Nirvana realm has regained its peace. Yiqing Luo smiled as she stretched her waist. Now everyone in Nirvana realm has already ascertained that Madame Qing Luo and Sir Overlord are the saviors of Nirvana realm. They are all thinking of ways to express their gratitude to you. Anai Ruapan's face was filled with a proud smile. Yiqing Luo was stunned. This battle, isn't it all because of you, Gui Wu and the rest? Halfway through, she was brought to the Palace of Darkness by the earthly sovereign and the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness. How could he become the god of salvation? Could it be that the people of Nirvana realm were treating her as a legend? Did they really treat her as their spiritual pillar, the light of hope? If it wasn't for the fact that you and Sir Overlord directly attacked Secluded Darkness Palace's main camp, allowing Secluded Darkness Palace's Palace Lord to escape Nirvana realm, this battle wouldn't have ended so easily. Anai Ruapan explained what everyone said to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo? Chapter 3450. Just at this moment, a steady footstep came from the door. The few of them immediately stood straight and looked towards the door. When they saw the figure, they obediently called out, Overlord. Dmo Shen carried a bowl of porridge and medicinal soup into the room. He walked past them and sat on the bed and began to feed Yiqing Luo porridge. The few of them looked at each other and swallowed all the words they wanted to say in front of such a scene. The atmosphere in the room was inexplicably strange. Yiqing Luo took the spoon that Dmo Shen passed to her mouth and looked at the four of them. Go tell everyone that I am awake. The few of them didn't want to see such a dazzling scene and immediately turned around and left the room. Yan Shaoyi was very considerate and closed the door. While feeding, Yiqing Luo repeated Tong Ziqing's words. Ah Shen, do you think the Secluded Darkness Palace has really given up on the plan to invade Nirvana realm? Not necessarily. Dmo Shen shook his head. As long as you are still in Nirvana realm, that person will not give up. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips. That person already knows that the Azure Dew bracelet is in my hands, plus that person's ambition, he doesn't look like someone who will give up easily. Dmo Shen put down the bowl and wiped her mouth, then immediately picked up the medicinal soup and continued to feed her. During this period you must not leave my side in case they make any underhanded moves. Yiqing Luo suddenly looked up. I think, they want to stop me from going to the upper realm. That's natural. Dmo Xian rubbed her fine black hair that was cascading down. In the Nirvana realm they can do whatever they want to you, but once you're in the upper realm their actions will be restricted. No matter how high the status of that person is in the upper realm, they can't do anything to you in the upper realm. Why? Yiqing Luo didn't understand. In the upper realm, there is a huge disparity in strength between cultivators, and their destructive power is also very strong. The security management of the upper realm is much stricter than that of Nirvana realm. Dmo Xian explained, above the earth realm is the heaven realm and above the heaven realm is the God realm. Although the sovereign of the divine emperors had passed away a long time ago, who knew where the descendants of the sovereign of the divine emperors were hiding? In addition, the upper realm and the heavenly Tao are mutually restricting each other. The historian of balance will not stand idly by. Yiqing Luo replied, listening to this, why does it feel like Nirvana realm is like an abandoned continent? There's no balance at all. Actually, the reason why the people of the upper realm did not intervene in the war in the Nirvana realm was not only because of the high status of that person in the upper realm. Dmo Xian pinched the young girl's cheek which was filled with anger. The main reason is still because of the prophecy of the upper realm. Prophecy? Yiqing Luo recalled the calamity which Dmo Xian had mentioned previously. She was startled. Are you talking about the predestined calamity in the Nirvana realm? Yes. Dmo Xian nodded and the hand that was pinching her cheeks changed to a large palm to hold her face. God Realm's celestial master had once prophesied that Nirvana realm would face a calamity, and also an opportunity to change Nirvana realm's current situation. Celestial master? Yiqing Luo frowned, her eyes were filled with puzzlement. But I still don't understand the calamity mentioned in the celestial master's prophecy. Is it really a calamity, or is it because of you? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes, the expression on his face was slightly dignified. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.